Get your latest money news now with Melissa Techi joining us in studio. So, Melissa, you're looking now at the proposed pay increases for members of Parliament, Cabinet, even our President. It's been recommended that it should be close to 4%. Treasury's not happy.
No, Treasury is definitely not happy because they were recommending 1.5%. So the big question is obviously, where will we get the money to pay our ministers and other high-ranking officials? So the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers has made this recommendation of 3.8% for politicians and officials, including President Cyril Ramaphosa, but the Minister of Finance is not happy. He says government can only afford 1.5% increase. On the line, we have Dr. Azar Jammine, the Chief Economist of Econometrix. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Jammine. A 3.8% increase for politicians. Would this be acceptable had we not been in any economic trouble because inflation is up?
I suppose it would have been acceptable under normal circumstances if the economy were doing reasonably well. A lot of the resentment publicly of these increases, proposed increases, lies specifically in the fact that the ordinary man in the street is really struggling with these high inflationary increases in food, fuel, and a whole host of other factors. And then they're seeing that their politicians who have contributed towards landing us in a situation of low economic growth are then just copping it out for themselves with reasonably good pay increases. And one has to bear in mind that even though the baseline increase may be 3.8%, it effectively will translate into a 6.8% increase once the gratuities are taken into account, the additional gratuities taken into account.
So, Dr. Jammine, the Finance Minister has been trimming the spending decently. If these proposed salaries are passed, what does this do to the plans of him keeping our coffers healthy?
Look, in the overall scheme of things, the amount by which government spending will overshoot as a consequence of granting these increases to public office bearers is not huge. It amounts to a few billion rand, which in the context of a budget of 2 trillion rand is not massive. But it sends a very, very negative message to the electorate that politicians are really there in it for themselves and are really not concerned about their country as a whole. And it also sends a negative message to international investors and credit ratings agencies to the effect that the National Treasury is unable to control the whims of the politicians in the country, and that can have negative effects on the exchange rate and on a lot of knock-on effects elsewhere as well.
So you may understand why this would cause up a storm, because many of us feel that our top departments are in shambles and we aren't getting a return for our taxes. Is this fair, though?
It's absolutely fair. You can see the disastrous situation in which the country faces itself in terms of service delivery, not only in terms of the supply of electricity, but many other areas that have seen service delivery just continuously deteriorate. And people are saying, well, what are we paying these politicians for? They are not actually giving us bang for our buck. And on the contrary, especially when we look at the local government level, we see political squabbling, swapping mayors left, right, and center, just in order for each particular politician to gain a position of power over the other. Obviously, because they see in it the prospect of additional income for themselves. And in the context of all the corruption that we have seen in the country over the last 15 years, that doesn't actually stand very well with the electorate. For the majority of the country, who are honest, hardworking individuals who are paying their taxes and just feel that their taxes are going to waste, and in fact are being directed mainly at supporting the lifestyle of the politicians who are not caring about the well-being of the ordinary individual and are just looking after their own lifestyle.
So public servants have often got some way in securing increases. How do you think this will pan out?
I think that there will be probably a compromise and that public servants will receive some kind of increase, possibly not as high as the 3.8% that has been proposed by the Public Service Commission. I think a compromise of that kind would at least go some way towards alerting the public to the fact that it's not a complete runaway situation where politicians can do whatever they want with their salaries. One hopes that that will be the outcome.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Jammine. That was Dr. Azar Jammine, the Chief Economist of Econometrix.